Hi everyone and welcome to our final week of the class. And this week we have a very short presentation. We've covered a lot during these last 7 weeks, and so for this final week all we have left is that critical assignment that is due on Thursday, and kind of close things up here. So let's get started. Alright, so we have the critical assignment. Again, this one is due on Thursday at 11:59 p.m. Remember that this assignment is intended for you to explore leadership roles in an evolving crisis. So we're looking at leadership and not necessarily management. And now they may seem similar, and by now we should be able to know the difference. We should be able to identify what we mean by managers and management and what we mean by leadership and leaders, the role of a leader. So we are concerned about leadership here, not how do you manage a situation in the sense of I take out, I sound the alarm, and those are management things. But leadership is, why do people follow that person? Who emerges? Who follows? Why do they follow? What are the traits? And then, of course, you have to assess this evolving crisis through the lens of the theories, the many theories that we have discussed over the last 7 weeks. Okay, so please make sure that you have that clear. Also, make sure that you do know that this is a hypothetical future scenario. So this is not something that happened. This is not you describing how somebody acted or behaved in a situation that has already occurred. That's not what this exercise is about. Okay, so please avoid that. And then also please make sure that we are talking about a crisis that affects a lot of people. This is a major crisis, a crisis that affects the public in general. So not something that would affect you, emotional crisis or a family crisis or even a teen crisis. It's something that affects an entire population, whether it's a small town, a city, a county, or the nation. Okay, so that's the crisis. That's the critical assignment for week 8. Okay, and then also I do want to make sure that you remember to use proper APA, especially in in-text citations, also in the references, and then finally don't forget about proper grammar. So careful with run-on sentences, careful with misuse of grammar, of punctuation. Okay, not using commas sometimes, or using commas where you don't need commas, or using semicolons where periods should be. So please keep an eye on these. I recommend that you proofread your papers before you submit them. All right? Okay, now I'm going to give you a couple of extra credit points for the course evaluation. Okay, so please complete your course evaluation this week, and so you can get those couple of points, which always come in handy. As always, you can continue to participate in Zoom. This is optional for this week, but if you want to participate and continue to share ideas with your colleagues, that would be fantastic. Okay? All right, and then last but not least, I wanted to share Dr. T's trumpet story. The trumpet story is a story that I've been telling my students in leadership for many years. And I think it's a neat story because it kind of illustrates some of the concepts that we have discussed in leadership, and maybe don't seem like they are leadership, but in fact they are leadership. And it mainly has to do with the importance of understanding what leadership is versus, say, the absence of leadership, or laissez-faire leadership, which, as you know, I've made a point during this entire class about the importance of not confusing laissez-faire leadership to leadership that delegates, because these are two different things. Okay, So the trumpet story is as follows. So it's 1988, and I am in high school, and I'm playing in jazz band. And my colleague, my friend Eric, who was a better trumpet player than I, he was a much more gifted trumpet player. He had a gig on a cruise ship. Well, it turns out he gets another gig, a better paying gig in another cruise ship. And so he takes that one and he says, "Hey Gabe, I took this other gig. If you want to play the one the other gig that I'm not playing anymore, you're welcome to have it. If you want, I can tell the band leader that you're going to fill in for me." I said, "Sure, absolutely. $200 for 5-6 hours. That was great money back in 1988, especially for an 18-year-old." So I take the gig, and of course I dress in my tuxedo, and I'm all gun ho about playing in this professional jazz band, this small jazz band, and so I get on the ship, and I start warming up and everything, and then it's time for us to start playing, and I join the rest of the musicians. Now, just to let me kind of give you the scenario. I'm 18, and all of the musicians are in their 30s and 40s. Okay, these are very talented, very experienced professionals. These are musicians, right? These are uh, tenured musicians, and here I am, an 18-year-old whose main instrument is not even the trumpet. My main instrument is the clarinet, and I taught myself how to play the trumpet, and I got very good at it. But certainly, I find myself in this situation where I am now a trumpet in a jazz band, which is one of the more important instruments in the jazz band, usually solos all the time, and I find myself in a pickle because I see the music, I see the chord progressions, the types of scales, and the music, and it's a lot more challenging than what I was used to. And so I go through the evening with having to work my way through the pieces, and I'm struggling, and when it's my turn to solo, I'm doing my best, but it's very amateur. It certainly isn't at the pro level that was expected of this type of a gig, this type of a musician, the level of musicianship that was expected and required for this type of a gig, right? Of a performance. And so at the end of the performance, I know that I didn't do well. I know that the conductor, the band leader, wasn't pleased, and so, but it's it's over, and so I'm waiting for the cruise to end, and I'm just kind of sitting around, and the conductor came over to pay me, and he said, "Listen, um, here's your $200, but you're young, and so I'm going to give you a piece of advice." He says, "It's not a big deal, but for your own benefit, you can't take these gigs. You can't take this type of gig unless you are ready to play at this level. You were not ready. You were simply not ready. You were so far from being ready, and it just wasn't good," he said. And I felt bad, and I felt embarrassed, but it taught me a little bit about leadership. I didn't know it at the time, but it is a lesson that I have come to understand. And what happened here was I threw myself in the ring. I had no leader to prepare me, to train me, to even warn me or about what was to be expected. I threw myself in the ring to play this gig, and essentially laissez-faire. laissez-faire leadership is the absence of direct leadership, the absence of supporting, directing, sharing information, coaching. Nothing of that. None of that sort happened. It was just me going in there and trying to fill a role and complete a task based on the expectations that I was ready, trained, and able to complete those tasks, which the leader, the band leader, assumed I was, and I presented myself as such. At the end of the day, it was a failure. And it was a failure because of that lack of connection between the expectations that they had and what I could do, and my lack of skill. Had situational leadership been used in this situation, I would have been reviewed, analyzed, assessed, and determined by the band leader that I simply was not apt to, unable to fill this role, this position as the lead trumpet in a professional jazz band, and simply would not have been able to fill that position, and somebody else who did have those skills would have filled the position. So that's situational leadership. That's where you assess the level of maturity of the follower. Remember, the level of maturity is the desire to do the job, but also the ability to do the job. I had the desire. I had all the desire. I had all the motivation. I was gung-ho to do it. But I didn't have the skills. I didn't have the ability. And so that's what caused the failure of my performance. The fact that my follower maturity level was not up to par with what it needed to be to achieve that objective and succeed. That's why I failed. And because of it, because of the laissez-faire leadership that was in place for me, no leadership essentially, it led to this failure. So, going back to what we have learned throughout the class about laissez-faire leadership and other types of leadership models, and at times we have brought up Warren Buffett as a great laissez-faire leader. Absolutely, he is. But Warren Buffett makes sure that the people that he hires are able to do their jobs before he hires them. He is absolutely, positively certain, guaranteed that they are able to do the jobs. They have the ability, they have the training, they have the educational level, they have the experience. And because he knows that, then he can be a laissez-faire leader. And so the lesson here is laissez-faire leadership. Very careful. It works, but you have to provide the training, the support, the coaching, and more importantly, understand and be able to assess and determine the level of maturity of the follower before you can implement laissez-faire leadership. If you don't do these things, if you don't do this due diligence, you will not succeed, and you will have the objective fail. So that's a lesson for you. I hope that you enjoyed that, and in some ways it's applicable to perhaps a situation that you have been through or might go through personally. The importance of accepting your strengths and weaknesses, understanding what they are, before you go into something like I did, where I simply was not able and ready to do something, and I thought I was, and I simply wasn't, and it led to failure. Okay, so that's the importance of understanding laissez-faire, understanding situational leadership, understanding the importance of followers' ability, right? Maturity level. Can you do the job? Are you willing to do the job? Okay, so these are concepts that we have learned and that are illustrated in Dr. T's trumpet story. All right, and of course, last but not least, I want to thank you all for your excellent work, great effort, great feedback, great thoughts and comments and commentary in your discussions and in your papers. And as always, I wish you a wonderful week. And this being the last week, uh, thank you and God bless. Take care and hope to see you again in another class. Thank you.